Okay, can anyone remind us a little bit what is Lucretius all about? What does he say? And kind of what you remember from the presentations and what we had last week, a little bit, or last 2 days ago. You are not here, so do you remember? Yeah, you had a, yeah. What are we going to do about your presentation? We're going to... Okay. You need to record it and send it to us.
Can I just get a voice recording?
Yes, and then they'll have to insert it somewhere in the... we'll see how it works, yeah? Okay. So, okay, tell us a little bit about Lucretius. Who can tell us about Lucretius? Well, first of all, to what culture does he belong? Roman. So now we're out of the Greeks, we're in the Roman world. And what is it that we kind of remember about this guy that, if you are going to think of him in comparison with Plato or in comparison with Aristotle, it's important, first of all, to know what he thinks so that we know where he differs. For instance, if we start with, when we talk sometimes of we say they are the three circles of our course. There is the macro, the meso, and the micro. The macro is the world, the universe, the gods. The meso is the society. And the micro is man, how he thinks, who he is, what he is made out of, the soul. So if we think of Lucretius, what does he think of the universe? What does he think of the bigger world? What is his view of, yes?
He believes in atomism.
In atomism, yeah, not atomic bombs, yeah. What does it mean to believe in atomism?
He kind of discredits religion and says that everything is because of how atoms move and create things.
So the universe is made up of atoms and something else. And space, void, so that these atoms can float. So it's like flickers of dust, They're just, so atoms for him are everywhere, and there is this void in which they move. And when they collide into each other, they form something. So, for him, our sort of formation of the world and the universe is in fact a kind of haphazard chance, over long years of mutation, if you want, we have arrived here. Now, how would this differ, for example, from an Aristotelian view of the world, What did Aristotle say about this larger concept of the universe or the cosmos or of creation or of the world? There's a prime mover. There is for him a force that is there. A force that is, in a way, planning, designing, a mastermind. It's not haphazard. It's not by luck. It's not by chance that we are where we are today. And for him, for Aristotle, an important thing is that the prime mover also takes you to a final cause. This is the concept that we talked about, which means teleology. Teleology means, telos means end. It means everything happens with an end purpose. Nothing happens by chance, nothing happens. And if you remember Aristotle's four causes, this is what it is to know. To know is to know the four causes of something. The formal cause, the material cause, the efficient cause, the final cause. So for Aristotle, the world is already in a kind of a system of potential and actual. You are now in process of becoming something else. Lucretius, what would he say? There is no mastermind, there is no divine intervention, and we are here. And I don't know how much this differs a little bit from our modern concept of where we are. If you take a creational view, of course it's different. But if you take the Big Bang view, that we have come here now after so many years of whatever, one thing leading to another, of course, it's a singular pattern. It's a singularity that you cannot repeat. Now, if you are a person who doesn't believe in any kind of purpose in this life, other than things are happening, probably you will agree with Lucretius that, we are here now, and that's it. And then where we're going doesn't really matter, and we'll see why. So his view of the gods, what did he say? What are the gods? Yes. Who mentioned that? Somebody of you mentioned it in the presentation. Who were the gods? What are they? Do they exist? Do the gods exist?
We said that they do exist.
Yes.
But they aren't very involved with the human.
Okay, so they do exist as what? He thinks of them some kind of atoms that are maybe of a refined more or an imperishable type. These atoms are not, they have been formed, they are more the gods like ethical models. Like, you would say this god is beauty, the other one is truth, the other one is justice. They are there of moral, ethical values. But what is the important thing about we and these gods is that the gods don't interfere. They have nothing to do with our lives. So think of a life or think of all the texts that you've read where the gods are not actively participating in the destiny of the hero. Gilgamesh without the gods, Odysseus without the gods, Oedipus without Apollo. Can you think of these, as having no impact on them? And how will this proceed? How will this affect the concept of? So can you rewrite the Odyssey without Poseidon, or Zeus, or Athena, or it's okay, don't worry. I'm cleaning the floor since no one is. So, so the gods are there. Okay, now what would it mean for a human being not to be haunted by the presence of the gods?
In most of the stories, we see how the presence of gods, whether in the Greeks or in Gilgamesh, or it kind of forces people to a sort of route, or maybe to a sort of what do they
Destiny?
Destiny. I think that if we, from those stories, we kind of eliminate the God factor from it, it wouldn't have led to the sequence of events of how the characters moved from one event to another.
Okay, so let us if human beings are not predestined, and there is not a planned destiny which is drawn for the characters or the heroes or the human beings, what this ultimately means? That humans are?
Nothing. They're
Yeah.
just existing.
But they are existing in what kind of a mode? They're free. It kind of says you are free. And this creates another kind of a responsibility, because if you're free, then it means whatever is happening to you is a decision of your own, right? I mean, then it puts on you this, you have no more an alibi to throw things on them. Think of how our mentality, how many times a day do we use the concept of, God willing, inshallah, qada'u qadar, qismat, this what, chance, fortune. Now, when you come to read, one day if you take another course and you take something of the modern philosophers like existentialists, and who do that, for example, Nietzsche played a very naughty game. He said God is dead. And by saying that, he wanted to see what would you do on your own if you are in charge. If you have no one to throw on, you become fully responsible. And if you become fully responsible, you are miserable sometimes, because there's no one to share your responsibility. So he is giving man freedom, but at the same time he's saying, now therefore your destiny is yours. Try to make something out of it. Make a good living, enjoy it, because no one is hampering you except your own actions. So this is in the larger picture. Now, what did he think basically of society? what kind of, was he very much encouraged in being part of the polis or being part of the city or part of the participation in politics? What did he think basically, you know?
No, I think he lived more, like you said, an Epicurean life where the sole purpose of life is to enjoy it and have the time for life, not to participate in politics.
And therefore, if you analyze a little bit the sources of suffering, if you read somebody like Freud in Civilization and Discontents, he says suffering comes to us from three sources. One is nature that sends you an earthquake or a tsunami or something. The second is your body, which betrays you. It makes you sick. It makes you have pain. And the third is your fellow neighbor. In other words, this living in a society, community, obligations, duties, rules, regulations, laws, and all of that, you know. Now, if you want to be happy for Lucretius and avoid pain, which was one of his main concepts, withdraw from society. Society is a source of pain for him. Society is a source of responsibility. Society is also a kind of forces you to do things you don't want to do. Many of us sometimes, we have a conflict between our personal pleasures and what the law tells us to do, or what the society forces us to do, right? And this concept of duty, which we shall see very much in Virgil, duty is what the Stoics used to believe in. Stoicism used to believe in fulfill your duty. Do your duty. You know, if you look at any of the plays that were written by authors, when you have a choice between love and duty, you choose duty. And we shall see this with the story of Dido in the Aeneid, you know. So, avoid society, withdraw from society, withdraw from responsibilities and duties, and I ought to things, and do only things I want to do, rather than I have to do. So this puts you in a different perspective. Now, that is something we will discuss more about. What does it mean to withdraw from society? How can we human beings live out of society? Aristotle says we are political animals, which means animals of the polis. We are people who are social. Can we survive on our own? Can we be able to live alone? Okay, what does he say about the individual, about the human being? What are we, human beings? How are we formed?
Of atoms.
Atoms.
We have free will because the atoms keep moving randomly.
So, you know, when the atoms swerve, he has this concept of swerving. The atom goes, you know, he thinks a little bit, you know, the picture that sometimes, you know, think of a parade. You know, next week is Independence Day, but I don't think we have a parade. So think of a parade moving, you know, in a straight line, and then think one of the people who is in the parade starts moving differently, you know, and the others start following him, you know. And so the whole line of this movement is changed. And this is what for him are the swerving. One atom goes another way, then the atoms follow, and they form something else rather than what they were supposed to form. This is spontaneous, this is unplanned, this is haphazard. Maybe the wind blew on them, maybe something happened. So you see, what we are now for him is a unique picture. Stephen Hawking has a very interesting concept. You know Stephen Hawking, right? You've heard of Stephen Hawking, right? Stephen Hawking says that what we are today is a product of what we have become since the day evolution started. In other words, our composition is a success story because all the items which made us helped us survive. If they weren't positive, they would have made us become extinct. So we are today, he calls this the anthropic principle or the human principle. We are today, you know, the best product of what has happened. This guy would tell you, okay, I am what I am. So if I'm going to say, who am I in an atomic concept, maybe I would draw myself as being, you know, I am atom, 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 atom. This is me. This is how I'm arranged. Now, when I die, atom A will go somewhere, B will go somewhere, C will go somewhere, this will go, and they will just disperse. Now, this picture that was me now ceases to exist. And therefore, this picture will no more have a continuity, even if one of these atoms goes to form something else. So it is when sometimes you have this molecular arrangement in chemistry, or even if this is gone, and even he says, imagine, and we shall read this now, they come back again by chance to form exactly what I am, it doesn't matter to me anymore, because once this identity has been snapped, I'm no more there. So you see that for him it is just the moment now that makes us who we are. And therefore, we're going to read this fantastic passage that is here and go gradually into what his ideas are. This paragraph, which is, I think, page 98, is one of the most quoted parts of Lucretius, which starts with, death is nothing to us. It concerns us not a jot, or it doesn't concern us at all. Death is nothing to us and doesn't concern us a lot at all. So now we're going to read and see how. So imagine this concept, looking back to all the texts that you've read and to all the concept of, because for him, there are two things that give us pain in life. One is the intervention of the gods, and one is the fear of death. So he solved the first problem by telling us that there are no gods who will interfere. So you have nothing to do. Now he wants to resolve the second problem by telling us that death is nothing to us. Because the moment you say, I died, you're no more there. You cannot be alive and dead at the same time. If you're alive, make most of your life. If you're dead, who is there to talk on behalf of you? You're no more there. And so look at this. Look at this passage where he talks about, this is page 98 on your PDF, so you can look at it. And he says, death is nothing to us, it concerns us not a jot or not at all, seeing we hold the mind is mortal. The mind is mortal. The mind, or the Greek word for the mind was psyche, which has also been used for the soul. So the soul is mortal. So what does it mean, therefore, that your soul is mortal?
You're gonna lie someday.
You cannot?
You're gonna lie someday.
Okay, but what is the important thing that to be continued when you say the mind is mortal? Or the so the whole chapter of the underworld in the Odyssey will not exist. The whole dream of Enkidu will not exist.
Just nothing.
Khalas, you put him in the clay on the floor, it's finished, It stops there, okay? We shall see in next week's Virgin. He has a whole chapter, book 6, on the visit to the underworld, which is the sort of template for Dante's Divine Comedy. It has the paradise and the hell. So imagine if you say, death is finished. ما في شيء, خلاص. The only thing left is to bury, And then, again, the whole concept of burying becomes, if there are no gods who are asking you to do rituals and religious ceremonies, even that becomes, the whole concept of religion becomes questionable. So, he goes on talking about what has happened, and he says, in times gone by, feel anxious when okay, I'm not going to read that part. He's talking about what has happened in the past, that many events have happened in the past, of which today we are not remembering anything, right? We don't have anything to do with it. So, when the bond is put asunder, what does asunder mean? when the bond is broken, it is split between body and soul, the two from which we are composed into a single whole, nothing can befall us, we who shall no longer be. So when the soul and the body perish and they're apart and they're no more together, because their being together, body and soul, is what gives us identity. When they split and they're no more together, then nothing can happen to us, we who shall no longer be. It will not move our senses, not even if the earth and sea were confounded with one another. And so this is the first statement that he makes, that after we reach the break, nothing happens. Now, what's going to be the next argument he has? Let us argue, he says, that after they were ripped out of our body, the soul and the mind and spirit still could feel. So I'm imagining that I have died and my mind has gone somewhere and my body is somewhere. Let me assume that they feel, they still have feeling in them. Well, so what? That does not mean anything to us, a coupling between the spirit and the flesh. We are no more in that combination. And even if time could somehow gather our atoms together after death as they are now, and we are blessed with the light of life again, assume, it wouldn't matter anything to us, not once our recollections scatter that connect us with our former selves. What does this mean? Read it and think a little bit. What could this mean in terms of what is it that he's talking about? That is in terms of one word that is very much making us human. What makes us, for him, who we are? Yes? Recollections, which means what? What? Memory. Once memory and consciousness are snapped, you're no more there, you are no more a person that is to be called. So if you have no memory of this life that you carry away with you to another life, we saw that in the Odyssey when they went to the underworld, the mother remembered what happened. There was a continuation. Achilles remembered, Agamemnon remembered. So they carried this life with them to the other world. But if there is nothing to be continued, there is no episode 2. It just finishes with the first episode. So he's asking, imagine that even if the atoms that we are formed exactly the same arrangement, but the memory has gone, and the awareness has gone, it wouldn't matter anything to us, not once our recollections scatter that connect us with our former selves. And then, what we were before is no concern to us as we are now. Not anymore are we haunted by their former sufferings. So what we were before today does not affect your life, and what you are now is not going to affect whatever comes next. This is a separate, independent chapter, which is your life. Disconnected from before, disconnected with after. Yes.
Means during life.
Yes, this life. I mean, this existence of yours. So,
everything you live is now, but it does not relate to later or relate to before.
yeah. And then you see how he will continue now. He says, for when you cast your, and what we were before is no concern, nor anymore are we haunted by their former sufferings. For when you cast, now of course this is a very strong criticism of the whole concept of reincarnation that was held by the Hindus, held by Buddhism, that, you go from one cycle to another. Every time you are born, you are reincarnated in a higher form, in a better form, in a more of a, until you reach nirvana, until you graduate. So this kind of nor is it this transmigration of the soul from one place to another like the Greeks believed. You go to Hades. If there is no Hades, God, and there is no underworld, all of this is removed. Okay, he goes back, If, for when you cast your gaze back over the whole immeasurable span of ages past, and consider matter's motions, a diversity so vast, it's easy to believe that these same seeds of which were made in now have in the past been probably arrayed in the same way. When we look back in the vast past, it is not impossible that these atoms that formed me at one time has also formed in the same way. So it is possible that out of luck, they arrange themselves in the same way. Although we can't remember it because a caesura or a break has been cast between those different lives, a pause, and the motions of their consciousness have wandered far astray. Since the consciousness is snapped, the awareness is snapped, the memory is snapped, no matter how the atoms arrange themselves, is no more any concern of mine.
So what he's saying is that there could have been another person who looked exactly like him?
There could have been exactly the same formation of my atoms, formed maybe in 6000 BC, but I am not connected to that, because I don't remember that, and that person's life did not in any way interfere in my present life, of which I have no recollection. Okay. Now, for if someone will ail and suffer at some future day, so if we are afraid of going to another dimension, hell or heaven or underworld, if someone is going to suffer in another place, he must exist at that time when the melodies be set. And if I'm going to suffer in future, in the afterlife, I should be alive there to suffer, he says. But death removes the possibility, since death won't let the man exist for whom these ills are hoarded up. When you die, you are not living anymore, so you cannot suffer anymore. Therefore, it is clear that death is absolutely nothing we need to fear, and that he who is not cannot be wretched or forlorn. You cannot be miserable if you are not. You can only be miserable if you are. Do you understand this controversy, okay? One of the things that Lucretius very clearly says to you, of all the verbs, one verb you cannot say is I died. Because the moment you say it, you're no more there. And if you say it, you're here. Yeah.
There's also something about the fear of missing out.
What?
Fear of missing out.
Okay, now he's going to tell you why we shouldn't be afraid. Why you shouldn't be, he's going to come and that and tell you. Okay. He says, what can it matter to the man that he was even born, once deathless death despoils him and his mortal life is short? What does it matter anymore to you when you are no more there, when death cuts you in your life? So, now he's going to the psychological part. So when you see a fellow who is outraged with his lot, and he is thinking, look what he's saying. What is the human mind thinking? That after death, his corpse is going to be put in a tomb, or not, or rot, or be devoured by flames, or by the jaws of savage beasts. So what are we concerned about when we think of death? What was Gilgamesh concerned about? I don't want to go to the underworld. I don't want to be a pigeon. I don't want to be a dove. I don't want to be a clay. And I don't want, and Achilles says, I want. So what does he say? If somebody tells you that the note is false, there is some hidden gold lurks in his breast, though he denies believing there's sensation after death. He is contradicting himself. His protests are a waste of breath. He does not rip himself by the roots from this life, but rather unwittingly has something of himself survive. So he is playing a game of being alive, getting out of his body, looking at himself in the coffin, and he says, haram, I'm there, I shouldn't be dead. Or my body is going to be eaten by the worms. But he said, you can't play this game at both levels. Either you're alive and you're not there, or you're dead and you're not there. So you have to make up your mind. If you're alive, there's nothing to think about death. And if you're dead, that's another word, So for when someone alive, then we'll see what. For when someone alive imagines that his flesh will be torn at death by vultures and wild animals, his pity is for himself. For he does not sufficiently divide himself from it, or the corpse, and standing at its side, thinks it is he tainting it with his feelings. That is why he resents he was created mortal, for he does not descry that in true death no part of him will stay alive to mourn, standing by to suffer as he lies on fire or torn for in death, to be savaged by the beasts of fire. I fail to see how it's more pleasant on the scorching pyre. Of course, the Greeks, one of the ways that they had their funerals was that they would put you on a kind of a bed of flowers and a kind of a couch of wood and burn you, like the Indians do. We see this in the funeral games of the Aeneid as well. So he's now, do you realize what he's doing? Is it clear in your mind? He's saying, if you're alive, you're here. If you're dead, you're there. You cannot play the game of being in both places at the same time. If you are here, your emotions are here. Your mind is here. If you're dead, you have no connection with what you were. The hypocrisy of man, he says, or the terrible game that humanity plays, is that you project your ideas of other people's death into yourself and start pitying your corpse, which is still not there. So therefore, where did we go? Wait. No more happy, welcome home, no waiting wife to miss you. This is what people always talk about when somebody dies. Haram, he's not going to have any more coming back home. His children will not kiss him anymore. No pitter-patter of little feet as children race to kiss you, touching your heart with wordless tenderness. Alas, no more can you provide for them. You can't keep danger from their door. Unlucky man, one dark day snatched these joys of life from you. So what do? How do we pity ourselves? Haram, you say, Maskin, he's died, this guy. Who is going to take care of his family now? Who is going to come and kiss him at the door? Okay. But they do not say, and all the yearning for them too. If they could see it clearly, and their words follow in kind, they'd free themselves from heavy dread. Why don't we say, for instance, he says, you shall be free from pain and grief from now on. Lucky man, khalas, your suffering is over for the remainder of eternity. But we, hard by, as you lie charred to ashes on the heap of dreadful fire, We should ask the man who says such things, if it all ends in rest and sleep, what is so very bitter than anyone could pine away in everlasting grief? If it is true that death is an everlasting sleep, this was something they did with Socrates. When Socrates, in the trial, he was put to death. You know, Socrates was condemned by the Athenian democracy to be put to death. And Socrates was always, whenever he asked questions, he asked, let us examine if this is right or if it is wrong. So when they said that your judgment, your sentence is hemlock, they gave him the poison to drink, he said, let us analyze whether death is a good thing or a bad thing. Now, because I haven't died, I cannot tell you whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, because I will be pretending that I know when I don't know. But I could suggest two possibilities. Death either is a long sleep, undisturbed by nightmares or dreams, you know, a restful sleep,
The example.
or a sleep, or death is a trip from this world to another world. Now, if it is a sleep, who can today not long for a nice, restful night without anything? And if it is a trip, then I will go and see Odysseus and ask him questions and see who is wise. So in a way, he tried to question. Lucretius here is saying, let us assume it's sleep.
Professor, but weren't the Romans familiar with the past, like with what the Greeks thought and what
Yeah,
the
of course,
others thought?
as a conscious, not
Yeah, their
unconscious.
culture, but haven't they read their view on the afterworld?
Yes,
their
I'm
view?
sure they did.
Why weren't they?
These are
somehow-
not the Romans, this is Lucretius.
Lucretius.
Okay, so this is one guy. One guy who goes against the traffic, you know. When you come to next week to Virgil, you find Virgil is totally different. Virgil is totally different. Virgil believes in the afterlife. He creates a whole heaven and hell, which is a kind of a template of, he calls paradise les Champs-Élysées. This is where the name comes from the Virgil's Aeneid. You know, we shall see this next week. So what is he now, this guy, pushing here? Do you understand a little bit his concept, okay? His view. We are atoms, perishable atoms. Soul and mind are material. When we die, we cease to exist. If we cease to exist, we cease to feel. We cease to remember, we cease to have consciousness. If all of this is part of my system, then there is full stop, khalas. There's no comma. We stop there. So, playing this game of thinking of me there while I'm here is not possible for him. And often, he says, when men recline at table, shady wreaths upon their brows, they lift a glass and utter from the bottom of their hearts how swiftly pass the pleasures of us poor old mortals. You know, when people sometimes are gathered at a table and they say, life is short, you know, and we sort of talk about we mortals. They are gone before we know it, and they can never come back anymore. As though in death, of all the evils, the one that will be worst will be that they are parched and tortured with a searing thirst, or else some hankering. In fact, no one regrets the loss of himself or his life when both the mind and body rest in sleep. As far as we're concerned, this sleep could last forever because no longing for ourselves afflicts us. Yet in slumber, these atoms, all throughout our limbs, don't wander far and stray from sense-producing motions, since a man who's snatched away from sleep can pull himself together. In sleep, our atoms don't disperse, whereas in death, they will disperse. So death could mean much less than actual death, for there's an even greater scattering of matter shaken at death. Now, of course, we come to you, Ala, about what about our fear, our concern. We're still concerned about, you know, no matter how much you tell me today, that, خلاص, okay, this guy comes to deal a little bit of psychology for the living. And then, what if nature suddenly should ask, what's so much the matter with you, mortal, that you wallow in morbid mourning? Why bemoan your death and weep in sorrow? For if you have relished the life that you have led, if you did not gather all your blessings, as it were, in a leaky pot, so that they've drained away with no chance to please, why not, like a banquet guest who's drunk life to the lees, depart and go to peaceful rest? If you have lived a good life, and if your life has been fulfilling, and if your life has been gratifying, and you have not wasted your life, and here's the example he gives, you have not put your life in a leaking vase, the water did not really get out of it. If you have lived a good life, why can't you, like someone who is at a banquet, who had a good dinner, and says, thank you, but I can't take any more. I have to get up. Why can't you leave the table and not sit and eat and eat and eat more? Because you are full. You have a good life. So if you had a good life, then you're ready to die. You're okay, But if all the good you got was wasted, poured away, life is hateful to you, why do you want to extend it? If so far you've been miserable, and so far you've had suffering, and so far, of course, we see today human survival will. I mean, take anybody in any hospital room suffering, and we still cling to life, right? We still cling to life. But for him, he says, if life is hateful, why seek to extend its stay? All will just turn out wrong and perish profitless again. Why do you not instead make an end of life and all its pain? For there's no further pleasure I can think up or invent for you. It's always the same. And even if your limbs aren't spent already and feeble, and even if the years don't waste your frame, even if you outlived the generations and you became immortal, even then it would be still more of the same. Nothing more is. So, what can we say except that nature argues on just ground and that the case she makes against us is completely sound? Well, it can be said that put an end, even Marcus Aurelius, one of the guys, says, if you have lived a good life, adieu, and then he killed himself. But what he's trying to say here is that, longing for something that is not going to be there is your vision of life. Okay. So, what is his advice? Away with your tears, you bottomless pit. Stifle your whines and moans. For having had as much of life's rewards as you could reap, you wither, but since you lust for what you don't have and hold cheap what is at hand, life wasted, unfulfilled, slipped through your hands. So here there's a kind of a request that life becomes a quality for you. Don't linger too much thinking about death. A little bit like Siduri's advice. You will never find the life for which you're looking. Enjoy the life that you have. Enjoy your child, enjoy your food, be happy, be merry. Okay, now, and as we go down, let me take one example that he talks about here. Line 982. And now he's here, he says, there is no Titius prostrate in hell. So he's talking about this concept of hell, who's ripped apart forever by flapping vultures. Nor when they probe her giant heart is there sufficient sustenance for them, no matter how huge and so forth. So Titius, or hell, is here with us, stretched on the rack of love, and he's packed by flapping cupids, eaten up with jealous care, or the worries of some other passion rip at him. So death is, hell is here. Hell is living with people you don't like. Hell is doing things you can't stand. There is no hell there. Hell is here for him. The suffering that we have today is his idea of hell, rather than in the afterlife. And even Sisyphus, this kind of continuous, is right here before our eyes. The man consumed with seeking the accoutrance of office from the people. And therefore, and then he goes on further down, as to the difference, okay. And then he has this long passage where he attacks Homer and all the, I know it's a bit heavy on our minds to think of this view, but if you look a little bit at his concept of death is no concern of ours, you do understand that he thinks that by giving us this, he is removing the second pain and fear that we have, which is the fear of the afterlife. What do you think of this passage? Does it make it easier? Yes? You think so? Yes.
But I feel like it's a bit pessimistic. It's not really Epicurean because, Epicurean, I think, from what I understood, it's a bit like a positive, tranquil life and happy, whatever. When he's saying that life is boring and
No, he's not saying. He says life.
it's the same and whatever, it's repetitive. So why extend it?
He says, if so far you had a suffering life, get out of it. But if you had a good life, enjoyed it. It's about time yes, I'm coming to this. Ala, you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it doesn't make any sense to think that way because in general, why do we advance in medicine? Why do we try to advance in science?
To have a better life.
Yes, and we also want to understand the world around us. So why only have 50, 60 years to discover the world? You can have as much time as you need. You discover the world better. You have better medicine. Like if we have a way to digital transcendence, where you can.
Yes, but how will this affect the concept of death?
Because I feel that death is something that's like a barrier for biological beings that we should work towards getting beyond that. The same way we.
So what you were saying is that will medicine one day conquer death?
Yes, it's totally different.
Okay. So then our atoms will not scatter.
No, but if you move your theoretically, you move your brain into something that is not biological, why shouldn't that be like a goal for us? The same way.
But that doesn't stop you from achieving goals in this life. What he's trying to do is only diffuse this fear and anguish you have of the afterlife. He's trying to take away from you the nightmare of what comes after death, or the uncertainty.
But
He's
he's
trying.
trying to make us accept it. Like, hey, death is inevitable. I don't think this is a.
You don't think death is inevitable?
Why should you look at it as inevitable? You have before we thought that hey, plagues are something that are happening.
Yes,
for
but
gods and
do we
it's
have
human.
people who haven't died?
People die. No,
Okay.
What's your question?
My question is: you're saying death is inevitable? Isn't it inevitable?
It's right now. It's inevitable.
Yes.
Who said that with technology you can't conquer death? Who made that rule?
Okay, but until then.
Until then, we should have the mentality that we want to conquer death. not
Okay,
that we
so
should
how do we
accept
do
it.
that? How do we do that? How do I remove the fear of death from people's heart?
Fear is something else. I'm talking about the idea of accepting that. We shouldn't be accepting it. We should be to battle the fear and work towards.
So what you're saying that I should not accept the concept of death.
No. we
Okay,
should
so
say-
I will not attend any more funerals. I will not go to any more condolences. And I say they don't exist,
No, we understand that is happening.
Okay, it's a reality, yes? Okay. What you want to do is change the reality, which I accept with you. But it's a long-term project. So until then, what do I do? Do I get paranoid about it? Do I accept it in a religious manner? Do I have a stoic approach of saying this is my fate, I go along with it? Or do you do what he's saying and saying, there's nothing you can do about it. Stop playing this game of being in two places at the same time. Enjoy this life. Make it a maximum happy occasion. He says, if you look a little bit down, no one knows what the years to come will bring. What joy or strife may lie in store for us. What is outcome looming of our lot? But by adding on to life, we don't diminish by one jot the length of death. So the more you live doesn't diminish death, Nor are we able to subtract instead anything to abbreviate the time that you are dead. Though you outlive as many generations as you will, nevertheless, eternal death is waiting for you still. It is no shorter that eternity that lies in store for the man who with the setting sun today will rise no more than for the man whose sun has set months, even years before. So by adding on life, you're not subtracting from death, he says. That is something else. That stays constant. But I understand your concept about Sabra, about that this is a little bit not happy and Epicurean in the sense that you're supposed to enjoy life. But he's trying to, he thinks that our main obsession of life is this concept of death, which we have seen since Gilgamesh, and this concept of what will the gods do to us. So he resolved the first one by making them, they are spectators watching us, but nothing is happening. And the second one by this kind of, so I'd like to, you think that this is not a, it doesn't help you in any way. I mean, if you have a speech like that, or somebody comes and gives you an advice like that, does it make it easier to accept your life?
It kind of forces you to accept life more, to make it more pleasant. It's not about being pessimistic. I can see it.
Does it diminish the pain of death? Does this? You cannot be certain what he's saying this too. When you read Dante, he puts him in hell. He says, you said there is no hell? That's hell, That's not for you, I'm trying to prove to you that there is hell. Of course, Lucretius wasn't welcomed by many of the philosophers, but he is one of those guys who is trying to challenge the immortality of the soul, the immortality of the psyche, like Plato. Of course, Aristotle believed that the mind is mortal, but there was a kind of causality. This guy is completely removing this concept of it's a materialistic world, and he's trying to tell us, that this is it. There's nothing more. If don't spend your time obsessed or rewarded. There was I don't know if I've told you this, but there was a kind of in Islam there is a movement called Sufism. It's mysticism, and we read from that, like Al-Ghazali and other readings in 202. There was one lady called Rabi al-Adawiyya, She used to go around walking in the streets of Baghdad, holding a bucket of water and a torch of fire. And once they told her, what are you doing? She says, I want to burn heaven. And I want to quench the fire of hell. So that you would love God for God and not for the reward and the punishment. In other words, that your love of God would not be limited to the fact that there is paradise and there is hell. Or it should not be regulated by that. It was, she would write poetry of love for the divine. Okay, this is a kind of a small chapter, but how much are we driven by reward and punishment from the day we are born, right? Children, do this, I'll give you this, and grades and all of that, How would the courses be if there would be no grades? And anybody who entered university graduated, something like that. It would make a totally different concept, different approach than the pressure of examination or that. Okay, he is trying to say that I'm going to make things easier for you. I don't know how much easier it is. That, stop being a schizophrenic character, playing alive and dead at the same time. If you're alive, you're alive. If you're dead, you're dead. If you're alive, you haven't died, so you don't know what's happening. And if you're dead, you can't have anything to do with living. Can you make this separation in your mind? If it is possible to make this separation, then according to him, you will be happier or relieved. Is that possible?
I mean, it's something by nature.
What about those people sitting in the back there? Are you with us? What do you think? What do you think about this concept of, I have to start gathering grades for your participation class grade. Otherwise, you'll get 3 and 4, if you're not. Oxygen consumption is not a indicator of class discussions and participation. So, somebody's very quiet doing this. Okay. Let us go a little bit to. So this passage is a very powerful passage in Lucretius, and whenever usually, if somebody asks you what is Lucretius famous for, they will tell you death is no concern of ours. This is the kind of cliche slogan that comes out with this guy. Let us look a little bit on our introduction to Lucretius that we had last time. This is Plato. I'm here, I forgot that I'm here.
But let people think about him back in the day.
Of course, he was not a people's person, The people who, of course, this philosophy comes from Epicurus as well. And you notice that these people are for the others, a little bit of, eccentric people, They're not people who are welcomed in society very much because they are, in fact, antisocial in a way. As I mentioned, these people had their own. Epicureanism was the only school. They started a school called the Garden, and it was the only school where women were allowed. And so, with women and men and pleasure and lots of drinking, it turned out to be noisy orgies in the villages where they were, and sometimes they were attacked by certain people and condemned. But the philosophy of Lucretius, some people think it's very modern, that he is not a first century person or he is more of a modern people today. And there are many people today in our world who think that it's a materialistic world, there is nothing after death. You are what you are, and therefore it's what you make. You're a success, it belongs to you. You're a failure, it belongs to you. People like Jean-Paul Sartre and others, were people who thought of this kind of philosophy, So I'll just go a little bit through this view to think a little bit of what he's saying. Okay, so if you look at his view of the cosmos, of the larger world, and he says nature is twofold. Matter and space. So for him, the world is made up of, so if you looked around today from one of the space and looked around and saw, planets and stars and things like that, you see, I told you, there is matter and space, This is his own physics of the time, which he thinks about as being reality. Now, this concept of swerving is a bit, to be discussed. Do atoms swerve? Any physics students here? Can you tell us a little bit what atoms do? They stand still? well, you know, like some kind of fissural or whatever, okay. But there is gravity that pulls it, or is there something that they what? Do they stick to each other? Do you think they have? Do they fall in love with each other? Do they, you know, like Aristotle's thought? Okay. Now, atoms disintegrate, according to him, but gods are imperishable atoms. Gods are atoms that don't disintegrate. So it's a kind of a, you know, eternal atom, if you want to. It keeps its. So again, here he has come with this, you know, ijtihad of this kind of to explain something of his own. But what is his main aim? No divine planning, no divine intervention, no aim or purpose in creation. So there is no purpose in life, there is no purpose in creation, there is no master plan, there is no, what?
Why are they there?
How's the nasib, you know? By luck, you know, it just happened. It just happened, you know. One day you woke up, there was the world, the earth.
That's the Big Bang.
Yes, but the Big Bang also, you know, it's over. This is why I said some people think he's modern a little bit, because they think it's a materialistic approach to the world. Of course, in the Big Bang, there is a sequence. There is a sequence of things leading to each other that happens to what happened. But again, I remember the famous interview that Stephen Hawking had with the Pope. At one time, it was the Pope John 23rd, the one before. So Stephen Hawking was asking the Pope, what do you think about the Big Bang? And he said, oh, I believe in it. He says, really? He says, how do you believe in it? He says, well, the first line in Genesis says, and there was light, and that was the Big Bang. And so Stephen Hawking looked at him and he said, well, he says, the first line in the Bible says there was light, God created light, and it was the Big Bang, and then things moved from then on. So in a way, he was trying to show that, you know, the creational version and the materialistic version converge if you want to make them converge for religious purposes. Of course, if you don't want, it doesn't, you know, the parallel lines never meet, you know. But again, the materialistic view, as you mentioned, Hassan, is a kind of a Lucretius way. So the role of the gods is only ethical. So they are there, but they have nothing to do with us. So why are they there? We don't know, but they're there, you know. They're just symbols of excellence. Okay. Spirit and mind, both perishable, is quite a bold move. From the beginning of civilization, there has always been, from the ancient Egyptians, who believed that the soul is immortal. And that's why we had mummification, that's why we have preservation of the body, that's why you have eternal life, that's why you have pyramids, that's why you have, because it was believed that the soul will go on living forever. And when you died, the Egyptians used to take everything you like with you, everything you like. So you will take your books, you will take your laptop, you will take everything you like. In the Tutankhamun's tomb, he has his toys, you know, they put his toys there. So if you like to play tennis, you take a racket. If you know, it just depends what you like. Now, this free will is also a little bit, you know, free will. Why didn't you want to make man, destined or anything? He wants to make him free. And the way he would account for this freedom is that these atoms are sometimes, you know, like children who say spontaneous things. No one controls them. So is our spontaneous reaction to certain events because of like hiccups in our will. Something happens and happens. So happiness is voluptas. It's not eudaimonia as Aristotle wanted us to see of happiness as the activity of the rational soul. Happiness is more amongst moments of pleasure, pleasure that gives you good life, happiness. And doing your own thing, or carpe diem, is pick the day like a flower. Pick every day as if it's the last day of your life. Live it at your best. Tomorrow you start all over again. Like he says, Sisyphus is not the guy pushing the stone in the underworld. Sisyphus is us every day starting all over to make our life even better or better. Now, one of the things also which is very close to Aristotle and away from Plato is that he trusted his senses. Epicureans believe, and Lucretius believe, that the senses are reliable. And the senses give us pleasure, feelings, primary knowledge, and sometimes the mind is confusing and gives us wrong information because we can make wrong conclusions. Now, his view of society, which is our middle cosmos, what does nature want? And this is why the beginning of the poem is, as you have mentioned, addressed to Venus. Now, he doesn't believe in gods, but he thinks of Venus as Mother Nature. So he gives nature a name, Mother Nature, Venus, and he writes this poem to her as a kind of bring the muse, bring the inspiration. So what does nature want? Two things. What does human being want in its life? A body free from pain. No toothache, no stomach ache, no COVID, no cancer, no diseases, nothing. We want a healthy body because that gives us pleasure. And we want a peaceful mind. So put your head on the pillow without any kind of worry, without any kind. Isn't this nice to achieve, to have not a worry in the world? No, you won't worry, sir.
I suppose like you need to be thinking about something.
Yeah, what about something nice? Why do you have to worry,
Because you need to be thinking towards something.
And you think everything you think about will be a cause of worry.
Worry isn't both of them. A worry can be worried about something. That's why it drives you to work towards it. If you have the same worries, you're just not going to worry.
Okay. But can't you think about, the beautiful green tree outside here?
Most of the time, it's like not only worried in life. Okay, we worry for a certain amount of time, and with time it goes on, and we have new things in life.
But what are the things that are obsessively worrying us? Are there things? Huh? Yes, but think of yourself in 5 years' time. Where would this worry be? Think of yourself, sitting on a rocking chair with your cat on your lap and your grandchildren around you. What would your worry be? We're going to go back to that again. Okay. So, just a few 5 minutes more. So, how do we achieve this kind of objective for Lucretius? Withdraw from society. Go sit on the top of the mountain. Relax. Be with people who think like you, who do not feed on you, who do not... Don't you have sometimes people you sit with them, you feel negative? You feel they drained you? You say, if they have emptied all my batteries, so I need to recharge, So be with people who recharge you, who are... And then, if politics, society, is a cause of misery, stay away from it. Unlike Pericles, whom we saw in the Peloponnesian War, any man who says, I don't interfere in politics, has no business here to be. This guy says, if you want to be, happy, stay away from politics. Stay away from society. And freedom is to be free from pain and pleasures and so forth. So, again we ask this question, can this pleasure-centered philosophy be recommended individually, socially? Individually, can we as human beings say, this is my philosophy in life? No? You wouldn't go for this philosophy?
It's extreme.
No. Socially, what would happen if you have suppose that your country decides to become Lucretius? And if it's not yet,
Don't be a country, no politics.
No, everyone be happy, Okay, so socially it's not a recommended thing. Okay. Individually, it may be at certain occasions nice to think of yourself, maybe, okay, weekends maybe, yeah. So let's think about it. Okay, we will start with Virgil next time, but we haven't finished with Lucretius. We will start making the comparisons between, because in the story of the Aeneid, Virgil puts the character of the Queen Dido, who acts in an Epicurean way, in a kind of bringing love before duty. So there is a kind of attack on that, and then there's the Stoic part, which is the real duty, and you will see that the adjectives change when one is a bit of this kind. The adjective is folly, passion, fire, boiling, and when somebody is doing the duty, true, pious, respectable, this kind of concepts. Okay, I'll let you go and have a, what shall I say, a pleasurable day, or shall we say a dutiful day, or a beautiful day, maybe both. Okay, so we'll go on with this. Thank you.